The National Emergency Coordination Group is warning of the likelihood of more floods today and tomorrow. High spring tides combined with a storm surge and strong winds have already caused flooding in coastal areas in the east of the country. Orange rain warnings are in place for Waterford, Dublin, Wicklow and Louth until Friday, while a status yellow rain alert is active until tomorrow morning in Carlow, Kildare, Kilkenny, Laois, Wexford and Tipperary, and continuing in Cavan, Monaghan, Meath and in 5 northern counties.
Putting a brave face on it in Wexford, bride Josie Connors made it to the church on time, but the status orange warnings across 4 other counties are expected to cause ongoing and significant disruption into this weekend. Significant rainfall is expected in areas already affected by flooding, and the National Emergency Coordination Group, which met virtually this lunchtime, says that due to river flows, heavy rain in one county can impact on flood-prone areas in another. In Wicklow, a number of roads have already been damaged, causing dangerous driving conditions.
A major concern, apart from flooding to property, are the conditions on the road. The weather conditions are hazardous, and in addition to that, we have a lot of structural damage to our road network. And we have a number of road closures, quite a number of road closures across the county.
No doubt there'll be roads flooded as people are on their way home today. So again, we'd appeal to people to be very careful. If you find a flooded road, just turn back, don't try and drive through it. And also we would say to people, if you have the discretion to work from home tomorrow, it might be helpful if as many people as could do. So that gives the emergency services and the response agencies a bit more flexibility.
Disruption has also been caused to rail services.
Well, with the high tide and easterly winds, significant flooding on the south side Dart line, and also then further south between Enniscorthy and Wexford, again repeat flooding with the saturated ground there as well. We're working to arrange bus transfers for intercity, and other TFI services are accepting rail tickets and leap cards for the south side Dart.
County Louth was added to the counties under a status orange warning, which will remain in place until 6 p.m. tomorrow.
Our main concerns are in the north of the county, particularly in Cooley and the Cooley Peninsula, where there's forecast to be significant rainfall over the next 24 hours, and that will quickly travel into already swollen rivers.
As local authorities hand out sandbags, they say priority will be given to critical infrastructure. The government has accepted that some flood relief schemes are taking too long to bring to fruition, involving a range of different challenges. Eleanor Byrnehill, RTE News.
Well, we have 3 reporters and correspondents standing by for us this evening. Colman O'Sullivan is in Dún Laoghaire, Petula Martin is in Wexford Town, but we'll start with Laura Hogan, who's in Carlingford in County Louth. An orange rain warning there. What's the latest where you are, Laura?
Yes, Eileen. Well, as you say, I'm here in Carlingford, and Cooley and the Cooley Peninsula is one of the areas that Louth County Council is most concerned about during this period of the orange rain warning. Between 30 and 60 millimetres of rain is forecast for Cooley over a 24-hour period, and that's a significant increase from the rainfall that came with last week's storm. So the concern is that heavy rain will quickly enter already swollen rivers and cause subsequent flooding. There's also a risk of runoff from the mountains behind us here for Carlingford and also for Omeath, places that have experienced flooding in the past. Now, Louth County Council is also warning that 3 rivers, the River Glyde, the River Dee and the River Fane, could potentially burst their banks. So people in the catchment areas of those 3 rivers should be on high alert. So too should residents in a number of housing estates in Dundalk as well that experienced some flooding during last week's storm. They're likely to see more flooding during the period of this rain warning. And there has been, as you saw in Eleanor's report, some coastal flooding during periods of high tide in Blackrock and also in parts of Drogheda, and we're told that that type of flooding is likely to continue over the coming days.
And Colman, you're in Dún Laoghaire. What's the situation now for tonight and tomorrow for Dublin and the environs?
Well, as you heard Neller's report, the main impact in Dublin and Wicklow has been on public transport, and the rail line between Dunleary and Lansdowne Road remains closed tonight, and there's another high tide expected after midnight. So that may bring further flooding. Irish rail workers will be out inspecting that line from first thing tomorrow morning to see if the floods have receded and to see if the signals are still working after all that salt water on the track. Also checking the boundary walls. And then further south in Wicklow between Greystones and Kilcool, there's a section of track closed because of a landslide which left debris on the track. So anybody intending to use the rail network tomorrow should check with the Irish Rail website or their social media channels before they set off. Dublin Bus 2 facing very challenging conditions this evening. They're hoping to have full services tomorrow morning, but again, people should check. And just separately, the gauges on the rivers Liffey, the River Dodder and the River Dargle in Wicklow have all been showing water levels rising since this morning. Now, they're not at the level that they were during Storm Chandra, but there's plenty more rain forecast to fall between now and tomorrow afternoon, so that is another thing for people to keep an eye on.
Petula, what's the situation in Wexford?
Yes, Eileen, there was concern of wave overtopping this morning when there was high tide. That was at 9:30 this morning. But Wexford town essentially avoided any flooding. High tide passed without causing any flooding, and aqua dams, which were deployed as a precautionary measure, they've been removed in the past hour by the fire service here in Wexford. The focus in Wexford has now moved to Enniscorthy, which of course experienced severe flooding there last week during Storm Chandra. Water levels in the southeast are high, but most rivers have receded from peak levels seen last week. There is concern, however, about the high level of rainfall that's going to fall over the Wicklow Mountains, because that will come downstream and feed into the River Slaney and potentially affect Enniscorthy. But ground crews from Wexford County Council are on standby there and are monitoring the situation. In Waterford, an orange rain warning is in effect there. It's on until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Fears of significant flooding there are easing as well, with less rain falling in Waterford than was forecast. Flood defence barriers are in place in Waterford City and in Passage East, and they will remain in place until tomorrow morning. The council is advising the public to stay away from coastal areas until the weather warning lifts tomorrow.
Petula, Coleman and Laura, thank you for those updates.
Well, staying with those weather and flood warnings, just before coming on air, I spoke to Keith Leonard from the National Emergency Coordination Group and asked him what's anticipated over the next 24 hours.
Had difficult conditions really, and they're already beginning to manifest now this evening. We can see the disruption to travel across Dublin with the Dart out on the south side and some flooding now in Clontarf and Donaghmede. So unfortunately we're going to see a repeat of that disruption right across tomorrow and possibly into Saturday. Difficult travelling conditions really right across Dublin and those other areas that are affected by the orange warning. And then obviously an increase in river levels, you know, high tides and that combination of surface water. So really a lot of, you know, surface flooding throughout the weekend.
Why is it that areas could be flooded even if they haven't had significant rain?
Yeah, so what we're seeing is huge or very significant amounts of rainfall right up in those higher catchments, particularly in Wicklow. And that water washes down through the catchments and then floods into areas where there may not have been a lot of rainfall, but the catchments bring that rain very quickly down the mountains and into more low-lying areas.
And how quickly might that situation evolve? Is it something that will happen gradually or could it happen quite suddenly?
It depends on the particular catchment. Some fill up very quickly and the rain flows through very fast. In the Liffey, we're hoping that the fact that the Poulafuca Reservoir is there will help to alleviate some of the immediate flooding and bring the worst peaks out of it. But definitely on some of the smaller catchments across each region, you could see the rain washing through quite quickly.
And is there somewhere that people can find out what those water levels are like so they can plan?
Absolutely. Well, I think the best advice I can give is to follow your local authority websites, and local authorities will be providing updated information on river levels, catchments and flooded areas on their social media as well.
All right. Now, usually a red warning is an indicator that people should stay at home and perhaps work remotely if they can. This isn't a red warning, but there have been some notices urging people to work from home. Why?
Yeah, we have advised where people have discretion tomorrow, particularly in those areas affected by the orange warnings and Dublin City and County, to work from home if possible. And really that's just to free up the network, the transport network, for people who need to get into work and for essential services to get around tomorrow, anticipating, you know, roads being closed and flooded and difficult conditions. So giving the maximum amount of capacity available across the network.
And Keith, if you are one of those homeowners that does experience flooding, what should your first port of call be? Who do you call for help?
Well, if you feel that the flooding is life-threatening or threatening your safety, dial 999 or 112. The fire service and the Coast Guard and the emergency services are on standby throughout the night and into tomorrow to provide assistance and rescue anybody trapped by flooding. If your house is damaged by flooding and you don't have flood insurance, the DSP have immediate needs payments, and they also have other payments as well which they can provide to help people to get white goods and also to repair their homes in the worst cases.
And will your committee be meeting over the weekend as well?
We've seen the long-range weather forecast from Éireann, and unfortunately there's very little change. We're hoping for some let-up over the weekend, but really we're going to be back into rainfall early next week. OK, Keith Leonard, Chair of the National Emergency Coordination Group, thank you for speaking to us on 6-1.